Hey, welcome to a new video. The Soviet Union used a controversial and grim tactic. Dogs trained to carry explosives and charge enemy vehicles. The idea was straightforward but brutal. Train dogs to crawl under enemy tanks, with the payload detonating upon contact. The program began in the early 1940s using stray dogs, trained to search for food under tanks. Eventually, they were taught to target moving vehicles, specifically the undercarriage, where explosives would be most effective. The hope was to undermine Germany's armored dominance, especially in large battles like Kursk. In practice, things often went wrong. Many dogs became disoriented amid the chaos of war and returned to their own lines, with tragic consequences. German soldiers were later ordered to shoot any approaching dog on sight. Despite ethical concerns and limited success, the Soviets continued the program out of sheer wartime desperation.
Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video.
For years, rumors have circulated about mysterious Nazi-era experiments in both technology and biology. While flying sharks and killer robots from movies like Sky Sharks are pure fiction, there are hints that real-life concepts may have inspired such tales. In the 2020 German B-movie Sky Sharks, Dr. Klaus Richter revives a secret project involving genetically modified sharks piloting aircraft. While entirely fictional, theories do exist about Nazi-built robots. No confirmed evidence, but the idea isn't completely outlandish. In theory, the building blocks for robotics were already available at the time: electric motors, remote control systems, and experimental sensor tech like infrared, radar, and sonar. Combine that with a team of brilliant engineers with no ethical boundaries, and you have the ingredients for something far ahead of its time. Perhaps it was a clunky metallic monster powered by rumbling engines and guided by primitive sensors. Maybe it could crawl, aim, or even identify targets independently. No emotions, no conscience, just following its programming. Did it actually work? Probably not, but the mystery only deepens because of that, and who knows? Maybe somewhere in a forgotten bunker, a rusty prototype still lies waiting to be rediscovered. ORP Grom, which means thunder in Polish, was the lead ship of the Grom-class destroyers, commissioned by the Polish Navy in 1937. Built by J. Samuel White and Cowes, Grom was one of the fastest and most heavily armed destroyers of its era, intended to strengthen Poland's maritime defenses amid rising global tensions. The ship combined high speed with formidable weaponry and was capable of both escort and offensive missions. Its performance outclassed many contemporary German and Soviet destroyers. On August 30th, 1939, Grom, along with its sister ship ORP Błyskawica and ORP Burza, sailed to the UK under the Peking Plan to join forces with the Royal Navy. During the Norwegian campaign in 1940, Grom provided naval gunfire support around Narvik. Its fierce performance earned it the nickname Manhunter from the Germans. On May 4th, 1940, while in Rombecken Fjord, Grom was attacked by a German Heinkel He-111 bomber. A bomb struck the midship torpedo launcher, triggering a catastrophic explosion that broke the ship in two. Grom sank rapidly, killing 59 crew members. The wreck remains at the bottom of the fjord and was first explored by divers in 1986. The FA-223 Drak was one of Nazi Germany's most futuristic aviation projects and is often regarded as the world's first truly functional transport helicopter. Developed by Facke-Achilles starting in 1940, the aircraft was years ahead of its time in an era when helicopters were barely operational. With twin rotors mounted on either side of the fuselage, the Drak could take off and land vertically, allowing it to transport cargo, wounded personnel, and even vehicles over difficult terrain without the need for a runway. Its versatility made it useful for mountain rescues, transport missions, and reconnaissance, especially in areas inaccessible to conventional aircraft. However, production remained extremely limited. Allied bombings of the factories resulted in only 20 units being built. Despite the small number, the Draki set the standard for future helicopter developments worldwide. With a top speed of about 112 miles per hour, or 180 kilometers per hour, and a range of 435 miles, or 700 kilometers, it was revolutionary for its time. Had Nazi Germany had more time to develop this technology on a larger scale, it could have radically altered the way war was fought. Million Dollar Point is the name of the location where massive amounts of American military equipment were dumped into the Pacific Ocean after World War II. Dramatic underwater images reveal the scale of the waste. Vehicles and gear submerged just off the coast of Espiritu Santo and Vanuatu. The United States had used the island as a key staging base for operations against Japanese forces. Among the wreckage lie bulldozers, jeeps, trucks, trailers, forklifts, tractors, clothing, and even Coca-Cola bottles. When negotiations with the local population over the sale of the equipment failed, the US deemed it cheaper to dispose of the supplies in the sea, rather than just ship them back home. Stories about the dumping vary, with many questioning why valuable civilian goods weren't just donated to the local people, who could have greatly benefited from them. The U.S. Navy's construction brigade, the Seabees, built a ramp down into the ocean, where soldiers drove the vehicles into the water, locked the wheels, and jumped out at the last moment. According to official Navy records from Operation Roll-Up, equipment was only to be retained as long as it remained useful. Here we see Adolf Hitler's plan to resurrect a forest from Germanic folklore. However, the Jura Monsters project was not only about restoring ancient forests, but also about reintroducing long-extinct species. It was all part of the Nazis' insane vision to establish a 1,000-year Reich that would not only dominate humanity, but also nature itself. Nazi architects of this bizarre dream designed blueprints for Aryan settlements and vast hunting parks exclusively reserved for Aryan animals. German top scientists under the leadership of Heinrich Himmler initiated an ambitious program of genetic manipulation to alter the natural order, both in wild and in domesticated species. Behind this project were two zoologist brothers, Lutz and Heinz Heck, who were obsessed with the idea of resurrecting long-lost species. The Heck brothers set their sights on the Białowieża forest in Poland. This forest was a refuge for wolf packs, as well as the rare Eurasian lynx and the majestic European moose, and one of the last bastions of the European bison. How far the Nazis had progressed in their quest to control nature and alter evolution remained shrouded in mystery. As the war engulfed Europe and the Nazi regime collapsed, the documentation and progress of the project became scattered and lost. In April 1945, during World War II, the top-secret Alsos mission aimed at gathering intelligence and thwarting German nuclear research made a significant discovery. They recovered 659 uranium cubes from a field near a laboratory in Haigerloch, Germany. This laboratory, hidden beneath a castle, was overseen by physicist Werner Heisenberg. Earlier in 2019, scientists led by Heisenberg had created a nuclear test reactor using a distinctive arrangement of 664 uranium cubes strung together by aircraft cables, creating an ominous chandelier. Allied forces transported the uranium cubes found at the site to Paris and later to the United States. However, about 400 of these cubes remain unaccounted, and their fate remains shrouded in mystery to this day. The majority of these cubes are still missing. The recovery of these uranium cubes by the Allies play a crucial role in preventing the Nazis from succeeding in developing nuclear weapons. The outcome of World War II could have been drastically different had they succeeded. Hitler's globe was a significant artifact located at the Berghof, his mountain residence in the Bavarian Alps. The globe, which was over 3 feet or 1 meter in diameter, occupied a prominent place in his study. However, it wasn't an ordinary globe, but a custom-made version that depicted Germany's territorial expansive plans. The globe featured a customized world map, highlighting areas conquered by Germany and future objectives, in line with Hitler's vision of a dominant German empire. It reflected his megalomaniacal worldview and a belief in the superiority of the Aryan race and the German people. Hitler often studied the globe, tracing with his finger the areas he wanted to conquer and exert control over. It became a focal point in his strategic discussions and decision-making, as he imagined German influence spreading across Europe and beyond. After the end of World War II, the Berghof was destroyed, and much of its contents, including the globe, were lost. Years later, it was discovered by a soldier and sold for $65,000. Paradummies were military decoy dolls first used during World War II. Operation Titanic, as it was called, went as follows. Hundreds of dummy paratroopers were dropped kilometers away from the scene to distract the German troops. These dummies were made of burlap, which was filled with grain or sand. In addition, they looked like ordinary soldiers to the German troops from afar. These dummies also carried sound recordings of gunfire to make them more convincing. They were made so that when they landed, they destroyed themselves. So few of them remained, but occasionally one turns up. Believe it or not, they sometimes sell for thousands of dollars at auctions. The United States and New Zealand collaborated on an extraordinary secret weapon, Project SEAL, better known as the tsunami bomb. Initiated in 1944, the project aimed to create artificial tsunamis capable of devastating enemy coastal cities and naval bases. The idea was to trigger massive waves using a series of timed underwater explosions. Under the direction of New Zealand physicist Dr. Thomas Leach, U.S. Navy engineers conducted tests in Wellington Harbor and off New Zealand's coast. Large quantities of explosives were detonated underwater to simulate a tsunami conditions. Some tests did generate sizable waves, but they fell far short of the desired destructive power. A truly devastating tsunami would have required vastly more powerful explosives, placed with extreme precision, a logistical nightmare during wartime. Unpredictable ocean currents and the massive scale of the operation made it impractical. Project SEAL remained classified for decades, raising modern questions about the potential of such a weapon today. In the final stretch of the war, Nazi Germany sought compact defenses against relentless Allied air raids. One notable example was the Fleerfaust, or Air Fist, a portable rocket launcher that allowed individual soldiers to target low-flying aircraft. The concept was revolutionary, infantry providing their own anti-aircraft fire. Developed in 1944 by Hugo Schneider AG, the Fleerfaust featured 9 barrels, each capable of launching a 20mm rocket. When fired in rapid succession, the rockets created a spread of air fire designed to hit reconnaissance planes and light bombers. Only 80 to 100 units were produced. Although it saw limited action, the idea was visionary. It previewed a future in which a single soldier could pose a threat to aircraft. The Fleerfaust is often cited as a precursor to modern man-portable air defense systems like the Stinger missile, and it went on to influence military defense technology around the world. U-352 was a Type 5 2C U-boat of Nazi Germany's Kriegsmarine, launched in 1941. Designed for Atlantic patrols, it was armed with torpedoes and deck guns, and carried a crew of about 45 men. After an uneventful first patrol, U-352 began its second mission in April 1942. Targeting Allied shipping along the U.S. East Coast. On May 9, 1942, near Cape Lookout, North Carolina, it attempted to attack the USCGC Icarus, mistakenly thinking it was a merchant vessel. The torpedo missed, and the Icarus retaliated with depth charges, severely damaging the U-boat. Forced to surface, the crew tried to abandon ship, but was fired upon with machine guns to prevent them from manning the deck weapons. U-352 sank shortly afterward. 15 crew members died and 33 were captured, some of the first German POWs taken by the Americans. The wreck was discovered in 1975 and now rests at a depth of about 108 feet or 33 meters off the North Carolina coast. It has become a popular dive site, known for its historical significance and abundant marine life. The site is protected under the U.S. Sunken Military Craft Act, which prohibits artifact removal. The Focke-Wulf Triebflugel is without a doubt one of Nazi Germany's most bizarre and futuristic aviation projects. Designed in 1944 during the desperate final phase of the war, this vertical takeoff and landing aircraft was classified as a Wunderwaffe, or wonder weapon, intended to turn the tide of the conflict. Instead of fixed wings, the Triebflugel had 3 enormous rotor wings rotating around the fuselage, with ramjet engines mounted on their tips. This rotation generated both lift and thrust, allowing the aircraft to take off vertically, ideal at a time when airfields were constantly under attack. Once airborne, the craft would tilt horizontally to engage enemy bombers with 4 planned 1.2-inch or 30mm cannons. However, the design remained purely theoretical. No prototype was ever built or tested. The Triebflugel stayed a paper concept, a bizarre blend of visionary engineering and desperate fantasy. The Bristol Beaufighter was a British twin-engine aircraft that played a crucial role in World War II. Renowned for its versatility, it served as a long-range fighter, ground attack aircraft, and torpedo bomber. It was one of the first planes equipped with airborne interception radar, making it effective against German nighttime air raids early in the war. Multiple Beaufighter wrecks have been discovered underwater, particularly in the Mediterranean region. One notable wreck was found off the coast of Cephalonia in Greece, where the plane was shot down by German anti-aircraft fire on July 19, 1944. Maritime archaeologists conducted research into the wreck and its historical context. In another case, parts of the Beaufighter were discovered near St. Julian's Bay in Malta. That wreck has become a popular diving spot for military history enthusiasts. In 1999, divers were granted permission by British authorities to recover parts of the aircraft for display in a local museum. The bouncing bomb was invented by the British engineer Barnes Wallis. He conceived the idea by experimenting with bouncing marbles over a tank in his backyard. The purpose of the bouncing bomb was to attack and destroy German dams, particularly those in the Ruhr Valley, which were essential to German industry and infrastructure. The bomb was designed to skip across the water and explode underwater, creating massive floods and damage to water supplies and hydroelectric plants. It was first used in Operation Chastise by the Royal Air Force on May 16th to 17th in 1943. The mission was carried out by the 617th Squadron, also known as the Dam Busters. The squadron used specially built cylindrical bombs, codenamed Upkeep, which were dropped from a low altitude and high speed. The bombs were designed to skip across the water and sink against the dam wall, and then explode underwater, causing the dam to breach and flood the surrounding area. This attack was seen as a severe blow to the German war machine and boosted morale among Allied forces. In the final stages of World War II, as Nazi Germany faced the overwhelming power and production capacity of the Allies, the leadership focused on the development of wonder weapons, or Wunderwaffe, in a desperate attempt to turn their fate around. One of these daring projects was the concept of the sun cannon. The idea behind it was to harness and concentrate the power of the sun into a focused beam of intense heat and light, capable of bringing destruction from orbit. The basic principle behind the sun cannon is similar to using a magnifying glass to start a fire. When a magnifying glass is correctly positioned to capture the sun's rays, it can concentrate sunlight into a narrow, highly concentrated, and burning beam. The innovation involved designing an orbital platform that would collect and direct the sun's rays at a target on the ground. This orbiting space station could be repositioned in Earth's orbit to incinerate any chosen target. Cities like London, Moscow, and New York could have been reduced to ashes at the will of the Nazis. The devastating nature of this weapon made it virtually indefensible. During World War II, numerous pilots reported sightings of mysterious aerial phenomena known as Foo Fighters. One such sighting occurred in May 1945, when a German pilot observed a Foo Fighter near Carinthia, Germany. The term Foo Fighters was coined by Allied pilots and is derived from the French word feu, meaning fire. Foo Fighters were described as glowing orbs exhibiting unconventional flight characteristics. They often appeared as luminous spheres, disks, or elongated shapes, and were usually reported as red, orange, or white in color. The encounter of a German pilot with a Foo Fighter near Carinthia added to the growing catalog of unexplained aerial phenomena observed during World War II. The pilot described the UFO as a bright, pulsating object that followed his aircraft with remarkable agility. The Foo Fighter maintained a consistent distance and speed, and defied the laws of physics as it maneuvered effortlessly through the air. The sightings, however, were not limited to one side of the conflict. Strangely, both German, Italian, and Japanese pilots, as well as American, British, and Soviet forces, reported similar experiences. This led to speculation about the origin and nature of Foo Fighters. The objects were often mistaken for enemy aircraft or secret weapons, but neither side could definitely explain their presence or purpose. Some people believe that extraterrestrial beings might come to observe the war. Do you believe this? In the German state of Bavaria, hidden in the mountains in a remote forest, there's a secret Nazi bunker. Very few people know about it, but this is said to be the same underground complex where Adolf Hitler himself stayed. The bunker consists of several rooms where other senior Nazi officers stayed. The tunnel stretched for over 6 kilometers. All of this was accessed through a concrete doorway carved into the mountainside. Above it all is Alpine paradise. Indeed, the place is surrounded by the beautiful towering Alps and has houses with terracotta tiles, flower fields, and domed churches. The secret bunker also appeared to have room for medical personnel and even entire families. In addition, it had air ventilation systems, central heating, priceless works of art, and a cellar filled with wine and champagne. After its discovery, the bunker passed through several hands, including that of the US Army, before it was eventually handed back to Germany. One of the strangest secret projects of World War II was undoubtedly Project Pigeon, an ambitious plan to create a biologically guided missile controlled by pigeons. Developed in 1943 by famed psychologist B.F. Skinner, the project aimed to harness animal intelligence for precision strikes, long before electronic guidance systems were available. The idea was simple yet brilliant. Pigeons were trained to recognize enemy ships on a small screen inside the nose of a missile. When they pecked at the correct image, sensors registered the action and adjusted the weapon's course. Skinner used operant conditioning, rewarding pigeons for accurate recognition. Tests showed the birds could reliably track targets and steer the missile. Housed in a tiny cockpit with a cathode ray screen, their pecking directed the missile's control surfaces. Although the system surprisingly worked, it was never further developed. The US military ultimately chose electronic alternatives. The Flammenwerfer 35, developed in 1935, was Nazi Germany's first portable flamethrower and quickly became one of the Wehrmacht's most distinctive weapons. Though based on earlier designs from World War I, this model offered greater mobility and practical battlefield use. It worked by expelling a mixture of gasoline and tar through a handheld nozzle, ignited by a flame source. The fuel was stored in 2 tanks worn on the operator's back, with a total filled weight of around 80 pounds or 36 kilograms. Its effective range was about 82 feet or 25 meters, making it especially useful for clearing fortified positions like bunkers or buildings. The weapon was first deployed in Poland, 1939, and France, 1940, and it became a standard tool for specialized units. In urban combat, it proved particularly effective at neutralizing enemy strongholds. After the war, such weapons came under increasing criticism due to their intensity and devastating impact. While not officially banned, flamethrowers gradually fell out of favor and were phased out by many modern militaries, including Germany's. HMS Royal Oak was a Royal Navy battleship commissioned in 1916 and saw action during the Battle of Jutland in World War I. By the start of World War II, the ship was considered outdated but remained in active service. On the night of October 13th to 14th, 1939, while anchored at Scapa Flow in the Orkney Islands, the Royal Oak was torpedoed by German submarine U-47, commanded by Günther Prien. The attack killed 835 crew members, many of them young sailors. The wreck now lies at a depth of approximately 108 feet, or 33 meters, and is officially designated a war grave. Unauthorized diving is prohibited out of respect for those who perished. Each year, Royal Navy divers place a white ensign on the wreck to honor the fallen. The Landwasserschlepper, literally land-water tractor, was one of Nazi Germany's lesser-known but ambitious military engineering projects. It was an amphibious tracked vehicle designed to cross rivers, support coastal landings, and traverse swampy terrain. Developed in the late 1930s by Rheinmetall Borsig for the German Engineering Corps, the LWS fit into Germany's early strategy of rapid combined arms warfare, where logistical flexibility was crucial in river-laden, infrastructure-poor regions like Eastern Europe. It resembled a cross between a boat and a tank. A steel ship-like hull, tracks for land movement, and rear-mounted propellers for water propulsion. Though unarmored and unarmed, it was highly mobile and could transport troops, equipment, and supplies across water or marshy ground. The LWS could also tow pontoons, barges, or artillery pieces through shallow water and was theoretically ideal for bridge-building units and stormtroopers. However, interest waned as amphibious operations like Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain, were abandoned. Only a handful of prototypes and early production models were built. Still, some were deployed on the Eastern Front and in the Balkans, where such terrain called for these capabilities. A more advanced version, the LWS-2, was developed later in the war, featuring improved armor and better water performance. In 2012, an astonishingly well-preserved fighter plane was discovered in the Sahara Desert, 70 years after it crash-landed during World War II. While exploring the Egyptian desert, Polish oil worker Jacob Perka stumbled upon an American Curtiss P-40 Kitty Hawk, roughly 320 kilometers from the nearest city. The pilot, believed to be 24-year-old Dennis Coping, encountered trouble in 1942 and managed to make a safe landing in the sand. Military historian Andy Saunders concluded that the British sergeant likely survived the crash, as a photo showed a parachute set up like a makeshift shelter beside the plane. The radio and batteries had been removed from the aircraft, suggesting that Coping attempted to make repairs. Since no human remains were found, it's believed he set out on foot and ultimately succumbed to the desert's harsh conditions. This discovery was described as the aviation equivalent of Tutankhamun's tomb. Based on photographs, the serial number appeared to be ET-574, indicating the plane may have once been flown by Canadian ace James Stocky Edwards. The Haunebu project has become a source of many myths and fictional stories, often associated with secret Nazi bases on the dark side of the moon, or encounters with extraterrestrial beings. There's various theories claiming that this project revolved around the development and testing of advanced tech, including anti-gravity engines and flying saucers. It's believed that if the Germans had completed these weapons in time, they could have had a significant impact on the outcome of the war. Some theories suggest that the project was a flying saucer secured by the Americans during Operation High Jump in 1947. It may have been linked to the UFO incident in Roswell, New Mexico. The Haunebu project also garnered attention in popular culture, including books, model kits, video games, and movies. It's also appeared in video games, such as X-Plane 11 and Warplane's World War II dogfight.
In the late 1930s, the Nazis showed interest in Antarctica and organized an expedition to claim part of the continent for Germany. The expedition was carried out by Schwabenland, a ship equipped with a steam catapult and 2 Dornier Wall seaplanes. These planes were used to conduct extensive photographic surveys, covering an area of 373,000 square miles, or 600,000 square kilometers. Operation High Jump took place during the Antarctic summer of 1946 to 1947, while Operation Windmill occurred during the season of 1947 to 1948. Operation High Jump included the largest group ever deployed to Antarctica, consisting of 4,700 men, as well as 13 ships and 33 aircraft. The main goal of these operations were to prepare and train in cold warfare. The main goals of these operations were to prepare for and train in cold weather warfare techniques and polar conditions. It's believed that just before World War II, a German base was established in Antarctica. During the war, the base expanded and regularly received supplies via submarine deliveries of secret weapons. According to these stories, the British attempted to destroy the base in a failed raid by the Special Air Service in 1945. Subsequently, Operation High Jump was launched to attack the base, but reportedly the American troops were driven back by the deployment of secret weapons, often described as flying saucers. The story ends with the base's destruction by nuclear bombs in 1958. The mystery of the Ghost Blimp refers to an incident that occurred on August 16, 1942, involving a U.S. Navy blimp named L-8. The blimp took off near San Francisco with a crew of 2 experienced pilots. However, it became the center of attention when it was found unmanned and drifting several hours later. It had been on a routine mission that day, but after a short time in the air, it veered off course and headed out to the sea. When it failed to respond to radio calls, the Navy sent aircraft to investigate. Hours later, the blimp was discovered floating over the ocean, intact but with no signs of the crew. The mysterious disappearance of the crew led to widespread speculation and theories. Some suggested that the pilots had suffered an accident, while others believed that they might have encountered enemy activity, leading to a forced evacuation. However, no definitive explanation has ever been found. The incident earned the nickname Ghost Blimp due to the eerie circumstances surrounding the unmanned aircraft. The Navy conducted an investigation, but couldn't find any concrete evidence or determine the fate of the crew. The case remains unsolved to this day, and over the years, various theories have emerged, including suggestions of a secret mission or an encounter with a UFO. The SS Alkimos was a Greek ship built in 1943 for World War II. During the construction, one of the workers was killed in a violent manner. Since then, other things have happened that would cause multiple spirits to hang out on this ship. People who have worked on the ship frequently discovered that their tools were mysteriously moved. They also heard footsteps following them when they were alone at night. Workers who worked on the ship or just went near the ship mysteriously became ill, injured, or even lost their lives. Over the next few years, the Alkimos was sold a total of 8 times. The reason for this was because each owner had to deal with tragedies in their lives until they decided to sell the ship again. The ship finally sailed into a reef in 1963 and sank to the bottom of the sea north of Perth, Australia. Today it's a popular dive site, but paranormal things are said to still happen around the ship.
As naval warfare intensified, several countries developed manned torpedoes, small submersibles piloted by divers, designed for covert sabotage missions. Italy pioneered the concept with the Maiale, officially known as the Siluro a Lenta Corsa, or slow torpedo. Nicknamed the Pig due to its awkward handling, it was a 2-man sub equipped with detachable warheads. Italian divers trained in stealth and used the Maiale to infiltrate harbors and attach explosives to enemy ships. Their most famous success came in 1941 when they disabled 2 British battleships, HMS Queen Elizabeth and Valiant in Alexandria. The British developed their own version, the Chariot, based on the Italian model, with mixed results in missions across Norway and Sicily. Germany created the Niger, a single-pilot torpedo with a glass dome. Unlike the Italian and British models, the Niger was notoriously dangerous and often considered a suicide weapon. Later versions like the Martyr and Seehund showed slight improvements, but remained unreliable. The US also developed the Sleeping Beauty, a 1-man sub for secret infiltration. Although promising in tests, it never saw combat due to its complexity and shifting wartime priorities. Designed by Austrian engineer Alois Sack, the AS-6 was an experimental fighter aircraft with a circular annular wing, an unusual design intended to improve lift and agility. This flying pancake had a round wing structure surrounding a conventional fuselage and tail. The idea was that this unique shape would result in superior performance at low speeds, allowing the aircraft to make tighter turns than standard fighters. The AS-6 used a radial piston engine and was built largely from wood due to wartime shortages of metal. By the time test flights began, the Luftwaffe was already dealing with fuel shortages and a growing lack of experienced pilots, leaving little room for risky experimentation. After only a few test flights, the project was abandoned. Still, the design remains fascinating. It later inspired concepts like flying disc shapes and VTOL vertical takeoff and landing prototypes. The AS-6 stands out as a rare example of bold aeronautical innovation during a desperate time, even if it proved too impractical for mass deployment. The SS America was a famous American ocean liner launched in 1939, designed by the renowned naval architect William Francis Gibbs. Intended to symbolize American elegance and innovation, the ship served in various roles throughout its life, including as a troop transport during World War II. Originally, it could carry 1,202 passengers across multiple classes. The SS America was known for its fire safety, featuring steel decks and asbestos-lined bulkheads, a response to previous maritime disasters. At the outbreak of World War II, it was requisitioned by the U.S. Navy and converted into the USS West Point. In this role, it transported over 350,000 troops and earned several campaign honors. After the war, the ship returned to civilian service under its original name and sailed transatlantic routes. In 1964, it was sold to the Greek Chandris Group and renamed SS Australis, operating between Europe and Australia. Over the years, it changed hands and names several times, including Italis, Noga, Alfredos, and finally American Star. In 1994, while being towed to Thailand to be converted into a floating hotel, the American Star broke free during a storm and ran aground at Fuerteventura in the Canary Islands. The ship eventually broke apart and collapsed. By 2024, the wreck had completely disappeared into the sea, now serving as an artificial reef and intriguing dive site. The Leichter Panzerspeiwagen played an important role in Germany's early war strategy. These fast and agile vehicles were designed to scout enemy positions and relay crucial information to the front lines. Built by companies such as Boeing-Nag and Horch, they were deployed from the forests of Poland to the deserts of North Africa and the vast plains of the Eastern Front. The SD-KFZ-222, equipped with a 0.8-inch or 20mm cannon and open turret, was particularly effective against infantry and light vehicles. The SD-KFZ-223 added a large antenna and advanced radio equipment for long-range communication. Though lightly armored and vulnerable to anti-tank weapons, these vehicles excelled in speed, flexibility, and tactical value. Their reconnaissance work was so valuable that they were often accompanied by infantry or heavier armored support to compensate for their vulnerabilities. They didn't win battles directly, but they made victories possible. To this day, the Il-2 Sturmovik remains one of the most mass-produced military aircraft in history. Joseph Stalin famously declared that these planes were as essential to the Red Army as air and bread. Thousands were built during World War II to fight the Nazis. This 11.5-meter-long aircraft, heavily armored, earned the nickname Flying Tank among enemy troops. The propeller-driven fighter carried a pilot and rear gunner, with a wingspan of nearly 15 meters. One wreck was recovered from a lake in Russia. The aircraft had been shot down on August 22, 1943, during a German attack near the Norwegian border. Captain Alexander Kalichev, then 34 years old, managed to safely land the damaged plane on the lake. Years later, the wreck was retrieved by Wings of Victory, a Russian organization that restores historical aircraft. Using floats, the plane was brought to the surface and is now being transported for restoration.
The Kugelpanzer is a unique and enigmatic armored vehicle from World War II. It's one of the most unusual tanks ever built, characterized by its spherical shape. It has a minimalist design on the outside, consisting of a cylindrical body in the middle where one person could fit. Two hemispherical wheels are placed on both sides of the central part and serve as its means of propulsion. The vehicle has thin armor plating of approximately 5mm, although the exact composition of the armor is unknown. However, why this vehicle was built and what its purpose was remains a subject of debate. The most common theory is that it was likely used as an experimental reconnaissance vehicle, though its low speed and limited visibility raise questions about the effectiveness of that role. There's also one example of this vehicle that exists today. It's displayed at the Kubinka Tank Museum in Moscow, Russia.
where it's listed as Exhibition Number 37. It's speculated that this vehicle was captured by the Red Army. Access and photography inside this vehicle is strictly prohibited, making it difficult to verify the internal layout and components of the vehicle.
A Nazi program aimed at strengthening the German race with Aryan blood involved a group known as Lebensborn children. These children were the offspring of carefully selected parents chosen for their physical characteristics, intended to breed Hitler's Aryan race, characterized by blue eyes and blonde hair. This chapter of history is still recent, with about 40 other children who grew up in the Nazi program supporting each other. When they came together, they shared stories about aunts who turned out to be their biological mothers, adopted parents who fell into alcoholism, and finding blood relatives. Some of these children were taken from present-day Ukraine by the Nazis, and sometimes told they were adopted. Most were taken away from parents in countries occupied by the Germans during World War II as toddlers. These children were then placed with German families to be raised according to the Nazi doctrine. Although some of the estimated 8,000 children born in Lebensborn homes in Germany were raised by the biological mothers, many were entrusted to families of high-ranking SS officers.
According to declassified CIA documents, there were suspicions that Adolf Hitler might have escaped to Colombia and remained alive at least until the 1950s. The documents revealed that a former SS soldier claimed to have had regular contact with Hitler in Colombia, and even provided a photograph as evidence. The report submitted by the head of the CIA bureau in Venezuela stated that the informant, Philip Citrion, alleged to have met Hitler during his travels from Maracaibo to Colombia, while working for a shipping company. These alleged sightings have been the subject of numerous conspiracy theories over the years. While the CIA took the claims seriously enough to investigate them, concrete evidence of Hitler's survival has never been found. Historically, it's widely accepted that Hitler's last moments were in the Berlin bunker in 1945. His body was reportedly discovered by Soviet soldiers and later buried in an unmarked grave. Speculations about Hitler's escape to South America have been fueled by the discovery of other high-ranking Nazis in Argentina and Brazil, such as Adolf Eichmann and Joseph Mengele. The ship discovered through Google Earth is quite mysterious. This is mainly because one does not know if it's a World War II ship or a secret ship ready to provide a safe haven for the world's elite in the event of the apocalypse. The discovery was made by a Google Earth user who called himself Earth Watchman. In response to an anonymous tip, he discovered an out-of-place landmark off the coast of Antarctica. Later, a YouTube video revealed more details about the truly mysterious vessel. It's believed to be a 121-meter-long ice ship. At first glance, it looks like a block of ice, but if you look closely, you can see the details of a cruise ship, complete with chimneys and a deck. Some people think that there might be a former secret Nazi base here, because there's rumors that the Nazis were in Antarctica at the time. Perched atop a cliff between Omaha and Gold Beach in Normandy stood one of the best preserved and most formidable fortifications of the Atlantic Wall, the Longues-sur-Mer battery. Completed in early 1944 and manned by the German Navy, its main purpose was to keep the approaching Allied fleet at bay before it could reach shore. The complex featured 4 6-inch or 15-centimeter naval guns, each housed in massive concrete bunkers with a firing range of up to 12.4 miles or 20 kilometers. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, the battery opened fire on ships near Omaha and Gold Beach. The Allies quickly retaliated with targeted air and naval strikes. Despite its robust construction, the battery was rendered inoperative by that same afternoon. The command center was destroyed, and over 180 German soldiers were captured by British troops. Thus ended this multi-million Reichsmark investment in coastal defense. Today, the site remains largely intact and open to visitors, a silent witness to a decisive moment in World War II history. Richard Montgomery was an American Liberty ship built in 1943 for rapid assembly and wartime deployment during World War II. In August 1944, the ship ran aground in the Thames estuary near Sheerness, Kent, on a sandbank known as the Nore. At the time, it was carrying approximately 1,400 tons of munitions destined for Allied forces in Europe. Despite salvage efforts that removed part of the cargo, a significant quantity of explosives remains aboard to this day. The deteriorating state of the wreck has long been a source of concern due to the potential for an accidental detonation, which could cause devastating damage to the surrounding area. Although the UK Department for Transport claims the risk is low, the presence of so much unstable ordnance near populated areas continues to worry residents and authorities alike. The SDKFZ-2. Kettenkrad was one of the most unique and versatile vehicles used by Nazi Germany during World War II. A cross between a motorcycle and a tracked vehicle, it showcased German ingenuity in tackling the rough terrain of Europe and the Eastern Front. Originally designed in the late 1930s as a light tractor for airborne troops, the Kettenkrad quickly proved useful in multiple roles, laying cables, towing light artillery, and transporting troops, ammunition, supplies across muddy or snowy terrain where regular vehicles got stuck. At the front was a traditional motorcycle frame with handlebars for low-speed steering, while the rear tracks provided stability and grip. Despite its appearance, it was surprisingly fast, reaching speeds of up to 43 miles per hour or 70 kilometers per hour on paved roads. Its compact size made it ideal for narrow paths, urban ruins, and even air transport. Although it had no armor or weaponry, the Kettenkrad was known for its reliability. On the Eastern Front, it was often used to pull stranded vehicles free, deliver supplies to the front lines, or lay communication cables. In North Africa, it proved especially useful in desert conditions for the Afrika Korps. The Weimoutiers Tiger tank is a German tank abandoned near the village of Weimoutiers in Normandy, France, during World War II. It was part of the retreating German forces following failed counterattacks against the Allied landings in June 1944. On August 21, 1944, it was reportedly left behind due to mechanical failure or lack of fuel, and the crew detonated it to prevent capture. For years, the wreck lay damaged and partially buried by the roadside, further deteriorated by scavengers looking for scrap. In the 1970s, the town decided to preserve the tank as a monument due to its historical value. Today, it's one of the few surviving original Tiger I tanks and serves as a stark reminder of the fierce battles that took place in the region. Though visibly damaged, it's been stabilized to prevent further decay and remains on display at the edge of the village. The tank's a popular stop for historians, tank enthusiasts, and tourists alike. Flakturm, also known as flak towers, were massive concrete fortresses built during World War II in various cities. They combined anti-aircraft guns with shelters for civilians, and constructing a flak tower was a colossal project. For example, the Berlin Flak Tower cost approximately 90 million marks to build and required about 800 men for construction. Cities like Berlin, Hamburg, and Vienna had multiple flak tower complexes, each consisting of several towers. Other cities, such as Stuttgart and Frankfurt, also erected smaller flak towers at strategic points. These towers were equipped with a combination of large and small caliber anti-aircraft guns, including 128mm cannons and 20mm guns. The towers had overlapping fields of fire, creating a dense network of anti-aircraft fire to defend the cities. Some flak towers also had additional facilities, such as hospitals, radio stations, and storage spaces for art treasures. During the Battle of Berlin, residents of flak towers formed their own communities. Up to 30,000 Berliners sought refuge in one tower during the battle. Flak towers were also among the last places to surrender to the Red Army during the fall of Berlin.
At the end of World War II, the U-boat U-530 surrendered in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It was under the command of a young lieutenant. It took much longer than expected to reach Argentina, arriving only in July 1945, with the logbook missing and the deck gun thrown overboard. This was remarkable since the war had already ended in May 1945. Most U-boats, like the U-530, had their deck guns removed after 1943. Yet the U-530 had a deck gun installed during its last patrol. The enduring question has always been why it took so long for U-530 to reach Argentina, and what it did during that time, but the crew refused to discuss these matters. It's speculated that U-530 may have been involved in transporting high-ranking Nazis to Argentina. It's also possible that the submarine made stops along the Argentine coast before surrendering. This theory seems plausible, as the journey shouldn't have taken longer than 6 to 8 weeks, even if the U-boat used its snorkel and traveled underwater throughout the trip. U-530's last patrol left Germany in March 1945, but only arrived in Buenos Aires on July 10th. This exceptionally long patrol, which lasted about 110 days, is quite unusual.
In 2016, a Russian archaeologist shocked the world with the news of a terrifying discovery in the snowy mountains of Bolshoi in Russia. He found a mysterious suitcase filled with alien-like skulls. What makes the discovery even more fascinating is the alleged connection to Haunebu, which was known for its pseudoscientific experiments during World War II. But what is the link between this obscure Nazi organization and the eerie find in Russia? As we ponder the origin and significance of the suitcase of skulls, it remains one of the many mysteries from a dark chapter in history. What do you think the Nazis were doing there? And could they have truly had contact with something supernatural or extraterrestrial? Let me know in the comments. Meet Neil Packer, a paranormal investigator who collects similar items. He's responsible for founding UK's first antique paranormal research center. One day when he came across a wheelchair from World War II, he quickly realized that it was possessed. According to him, the wheelchair was said to be possessed by hundreds of spirits belonging to a World War II rehabilitation hospital. Neil described his experience of sitting in the chair as painful, and said it was like his leg was being chopped off as soon as he sat in it. He decided one day to take the chair with him to a TV show. And what happened during the broadcast was very strange. The presenter sat down in the possessed chair, and at one point it looked like his leg had disappeared. Pretty creepy. So, would this chair actually be possessed? What do you think? The British War Office was intrigued by the idea of deploying vehicles directly into combat zones and began experimenting with airborne transport. One of the strangest projects was the Hafner Rotobuggy, also known as the Flying Jeep, a bizarre hybrid between a Willys Jeep and an autogyro. In 1942, Austrian-British engineer Raoul Hafner designed a glider version of a military jeep that could be towed by a plane and land without a runway. A standard jeep was fitted with a massive two-blade rotor on top, a tail fin at the rear, and stabilizing rudders. It was part of a broader set of experiments, including the Rotochute and Rototank, aimed at aerial deployment of troops and gear. Test flights began in 1943, with the jeep towed into the air by a Whitley bomber, using the rotor to glide down like a gyrocopter. Surprisingly, the Rotobuggy flew quite well. It reached speeds of up to 105 kilometers per hour and landed smoothly thanks to its spinning blades and shock-absorbing wheels. However, the project was ultimately shelved. By 1944, better methods had emerged for transporting jeeps by aircraft, rendering the concept obsolete. In the war's final stages, German engineers under Nazi command worked on bold and experimental technologies. One such project was the Windkanone, also known as the Luftkanone. Developed under Luftwaffe engineer Johannes Schmidt, this massive air cannon was designed to disable targets using nothing but air. No bullets, no explosions, just a powerful burst of air at high speed. The goal was to build a cannon that could blow a strong air blast across a battlefield to knock people off balance and disrupt light structures or troop formations. The weapon featured a 23 feet or 7 meter long barrel mounted on a train platform, powered by air tanks capable of generating wind speeds of up to 1,148 feet or 350 meters per second. Tests conducted near Prague in 1943 measured noticeable wind pressure, but its limitations quickly became clear. The range was modest, the recoil was intense, and the whole system was large and noisy. After the war, the prototype was discovered and confiscated by Allied forces. It was ultimately decommissioned, possibly to discourage further development of similar but more powerful systems. The Murmansk was a Sverdlov-class light cruiser of the Soviet Navy, launched in 1955 during the Cold War. As part of the Soviet Northern Fleet, it was equipped with powerful artillery and advanced radar systems. Measuring 389 feet or 210 meters long and 72 feet or 22 meters wide, the ship showcased the naval technology of its era. The Murmansk was built for fast operations in the rough waters of the North Atlantic, with enhanced seaworthiness and modern equipment. After being decommissioned in 1994, it was sold to India for scrapping. However, during towing, the vessel ran aground near Sørvær, Norway. Although it was expected that winter storms would eventually destroy the wreck, it remained largely intact for years. Environmental concerns arose due to hazardous materials on board, including fuel residues, PCBs, and asbestos. A large-scale cleanup effort began, including the construction of a dam around the wreck. By 2013, the Murmansk had been fully dismantled on site, bringing an end to this Cold War giant's final chapter. The Henschel HS-129 was a German twin-engine ground attack aircraft, specifically designed to destroy heavily armored Soviet tanks like the T-34. It was primarily deployed on the Eastern Front between 1942 and 1945. The design featured a compact cockpit protected by a steel bathtub to shield the pilot from ground fire, though this protection resulted in a cramped workspace with poor visibility. Early models were underpowered due to weak Argus AS410 engines, but the later B-series received stronger French Gnome-Rhone engines. Eventually, the HS-129 was equipped with a massive 75mm BK 7.5 cannon, adapted from the PAK-40 anti-tank gun. Only 25 aircraft could carry this weapon configuration due to its enormous recoil and weight. After brief deployment in North Africa, it was mainly used on the Eastern Front, where its anti-tank capability was most needed. Despite its impressive firepower, the aircraft remained vulnerable to enemy fighters and often required air cover to operate effectively. Deep in the Red Sea lies a shipment of Norton 16H motorcycles from World War II. Specially designed for military use, these bikes were lost along the cargo aboard the SS Thistlegorm, a British armed merchant ship bombed by the German Luftwaffe in October 1941. Today, these submerged motorcycles attract divers from around the world, fascinated by their surprisingly well-preserved condition and the uniqueness of the location. They represent a rare fusion of history and adventure, with the past literally rising beneath the waves. In February 2018, German photographer Tobias Frederick won the title of Underwater Photographer of the Year with a stunning panoramic shot of the Norton bikes. Interestingly, other World War II-era motorcycles have also been discovered deep in forests, as well as underwater, including one that might be a Red October L300 or an original DKW Lexus 300.
The Autobahn is a high-speed limited-access highway system, serving as the basis for the first modern national freeway network. It was planned in Germany in the early 1930s and expanded into a national freeway network, totaling 2,108 kilometers by 1942. After World War II, West Germany embarked on an ambitious reconstruction of the system, and in 1989, the West German system was merged with the East German system. It was one of the longest freeway networks in the world, with a total length of about 8,075 miles, and it was also known for the absence of a general speed limit. The Autobahn played a significant role in German history, including its use as a major asset during World War II. The German Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, which involved massive coordinated attacks, also used the Autobahn for rapid troop movements. And as for transportation, another incredible thing the Nazis built was the Volkswagen. Its mass production was initiated by the German government under the leadership of Adolf Hitler and the National Socialist Party. The goal was to create an affordable but speedy vehicle that could be sold relatively cheap for about $140. To provide the design for this people's car, Hitler enlisted the help of the Austrian and German automotive engineer, Ferdinand Porsche. In the late 1930s and early 1940s, the German Kriegsmarine had plans to meet the demands of Plan Z, which aimed to rearm and expand the Nazi German Navy. As part of their plan, monstrous super battleships were envisioned, collectively known as the H-class. However, these battleships were never given individual names, and are simply referred to as the H-class. The original design, known as H-39, called for the construction of 6 ships that were essentially enlarged versions of the Bismarck-class battleships, armed with enormous cannons. Later, designs like the H-41 featured even larger main guns, with 8 weapons. The final design, known as H-44, boasted a massive arsenal of even larger cannons. The earliest design studies for the battleship, coded as Battleship H, can be traced back to 1935. Hitler himself demanded weapons larger than those of any potential opponent, emphasizing the superiority of these battleships. However, the outbreak of war in September 1939 caused a halt in the construction of the H-class ships. It was expected that the work on the battleships would resume after a German victory in the war.
Truk Lagoon, located in the Pacific Ocean, houses one of the most famous underwater cemeteries in the world. During World War II, Truk served as a major Japanese naval base and became the target of a devastating air attack in February 1944, known as Operation Hailstone. The attack resulted in the sinking of numerous Japanese ships and aircraft, creating the Truk Lagoon Cemetery. Truk Lagoon is scattered with the remnants of over 60 ships and 250 aircraft, most of which are left on the seabed. The sunken vessels include battleships, cruisers, destroyers, submarines, cargo ships, and even small aircraft carriers. These wrecks now serve as artificial reefs and attract divers from all around the world. Exploring the Truk Lagoon Cemetery is like a journey back in time. The wrecks are remarkably well preserved, thanks to the calm, protected waters of the lagoon and the absence of strong currents. If you're a diving enthusiast, you can swim through the eerie corridors of sunken warships here, providing you with a unique diving experience. It took businessman Alfredo Etchegaray a lot of effort and some $5 million to make this stunning discovery in 2006. He had salvaged it from the wreck of the German battleship Graf Spee in the shallow waters just outside the capital of Uruguay. The discovery in question was a huge bronze eagle. During the war, this statue decorated the bow of the German battleship. The bronze eagle weighed a whopping 317 kilograms and had a terrifying wingspan of nearly 3 meters. This strange discovery, however, was not without its consequences. A legal battle followed, in which Alfredo came into conflict with the government with his claims to have the eagle. A legal battle followed in which Alfredo came into conflict with the government with his claim to the eagle.
He eventually sold it to have it displayed at a museum.
At the end of World War II and the start of the Cold War, Canada and the US jointly developed an unusual aviation project, the Avro Canada VZ-9 Avrocar. This was an experimental flying saucer powered by jet engines, designed as a revolutionary VTOL vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Born from post-war fascination with disc-shaped aircraft, the Avrocar was intended to be more agile and flexible than airplanes or helicopters. Built by Avro Canada and funded by the US in the late 1940s, the craft was designed for reconnaissance or transport from makeshift locations. The Avrocar used 3 jet engines to power a central turborotor, directing thrust downward for liftoff. However, test flights in the 1950s revealed extreme instability. A phenomenon called hubcapping, an uncontrollable rocking motion, made hovering difficult. The Avrocar could barely rise a few feet off the ground, and flying in a straight line proved nearly impossible. Despite several improvement attempts, the project was cancelled in 1961. Still, its saucer shape and secretive nature fueled UFO speculation for years. Ferngelenkte Florikite was a groundbreaking technological development, decades ahead of its time. Initiated in 1942, the project aimed to create a vertically launched interception missile inspired by the V-2 rocket design. At roughly 25 feet or 7.5 meters tall and weighing nearly 8,000 pounds or 3,600 kilograms, it used a liquid-fueled rocket engine capable of reaching speeds up to 1,678 miles per hour, 2,700 kilometers per hour, with a range of about 31 miles or 50 kilometers and an altitude ceiling of 31 miles or 18 kilometers. It was theoretically able to engage high-altitude targets, such as heavy bombers. Unlike the ballistic V-2, the Wasserfall was remotely controlled via radar guidance and manual operation, a primitive precursor to modern precision systems. Its warhead used a proximity fuse, allowing it to disrupt targets without a direct hit. Several test flights were conducted with mixed results, but it never reached mass deployment. After the war, both the United States and the Soviet Union studied the missile's design in detail. Its propulsion and guidance concepts influenced later systems like the Nike Ajax and the SA-2. However, the Wasserfall itself was never further developed or produced. The Skeleton Coast in Namibia stretches along the Atlantic shoreline, where the cold Benguela Current collides with the scorching Namib Desert. This clash creates dense fog and treacherous currents, resulting in over 1,000 shipwrecks scattered along the coast. The indigenous Sand people once called this area the land god made in anger. Today, the desolate coastline is littered with rusting hulls, whale bones, and remnants of maritime disasters. One of the most notable wrecks is the Dunedin Star, a British cargo ship that ran aground on November 29, 1942, while carrying munitions and passengers to support the British 8th Army. It stranded near the Clan Alpine Shoal, triggering a complex rescue effort involving ships, aircraft, and land convoys. Despite the harsh conditions, all 106 passengers and crew were eventually rescued, although a tugboat, a plane, and 2 rescuers were lost during the mission. Another iconic wreck is the Eduard Bolin, a German cargo ship that sank in thick fog near Conception Bay on September 5, 1909. Due to shifting sands, its remains now lie about 2,625 feet, or 800 meters inland, appearing eerily stranded in the desert. The Otavi, a lesser-known steamship that was transporting guano, ran aground near Spencer Bay in 1945. Though not as famous as the Dunedin Star or Eduard Bolin, the Otavi's wreck adds to the ghostly scenery of the perilous Skeleton Coast. The Jagdtiger represented the peak of Nazi Germany's obsession with heavy tank destroyers, an almost unstoppable giant designed to eliminate enemy armor from extreme distances. Based on the already impressive Tiger II chassis, the Jagdtiger weighed nearly 75 tons, making it the heaviest operational combat vehicle of World War II. With its thick frontal armor and enormous size, it was designed for static defense rather than rapid maneuvering. Its main weapon was a massive anti-tank gun capable of destroying virtually any Allied tank long before they could return fire. The Jagdtiger's front armor was up to 10 inches or 250 millimeters thick, making it nearly impervious to most Allied weapons. But such brute force came at a price. The Jagdtiger was slow, prone to mechanical failures, and often fell victim to its own weight. The engine and drivetrain struggled under the load. Only 70 to 80 units were built between 1944 and 1945 due to bombings and resource shortages. Many saw action on the Western Front, particularly during the Battle of the Bulge. When properly positioned, a single Jagdtiger could decimate an entire enemy formation. But such scenarios were rare. More often, they broke down due to engine trouble or fuel shortages rather than enemy fire. But imagine how deadly they could have been if they had been reliable. The Musashi, along with her sister ship Yamato, was one of the largest battleships ever constructed and a symbol of Japan's naval power during World War II. Commissioned in 1942, the vessel was equipped with enormous 46cm or 18.1-inch guns and heavily armored, though its massive size also made it a prime target. Despite its potential, the Musashi saw limited action until the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944, one of the largest naval battles in history. On October 24, 1944, during the opening phase of the battle in the Siberian Sea, the Musashi was repeatedly attacked by U.S. carrier-based aircraft. In a matter of hours, it was hit by at least 17 bombs and 19 torpedoes. Heavily damaged and flooding, the ship eventually capsized and sank, taking over 1,000 crew members with it. The wreck remained undiscovered for decades, until 2015, when it was located by a team led by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. It was resting more than a kilometer beneath the surface. The Musashi is an exceptionally well-preserved relic of the battleship era, powerful yet ultimately vulnerable to air attacks. The Krummelhof, which means curved barrel in English, was a unique addition developed by Germany for one of its rifles. Let's further explore the incredible invention. The Krummelhof was designed as a barrel attachment with a curved shape, allowing soldiers to shoot around corners from a safe position without exposing themselves to return fire. It included a periscope sight and a mirror to enable the shooter to maintain a standard grip and cheek while aiming. It was primarily intended for use at close range, such as in urban combat or trench warfare, where soldiers needed to hit targets without direct line of sight. Several variants of this were produced, with several degrees of curvature, including a 30-degree, 45-degree, 60-degree, and even 90-degree. However, the 30-degree variant was the only one produced in significant numbers. The Krummelhof is often seen as an example of Germany's late war obsession with developing unconventional and impractical weapons. Although the concept of shooting around corners was intriguing, the limitations and technical difficulties prevented it from becoming an effective and widely used weapon. During World War II, both the German and Allied soldiers relied on the use of performance-enhancing drugs to maintain their endurance. German troops were given a form of methamphetamine in pill form, which was widely distributed among soldiers before the successful invasion of France in 1940. By that time, the drug was widespread among Luftwaffe pilots, which was to prepare them for demanding requirements of long missions or to combat insomnia and hunger. During the Blitz, a ruthless Nazi bombing campaign against Great Britain from April to June 1940, about 35 million tablets were sent to 3 million German soldiers, sailors, and pilots. These soldiers covered extensive distances, pushing the front lines forward without sleep or rest. Soldiers were then kept awake for long periods, enhancing their performance under grueling conditions and alleviating the effects of shell shock and PTSD. The Il-2 Project was a research organization established within the Nazi regime in 1935. Il-2 aimed to legitimize an ideology of Aryan supremacy. One of the main objectives of the project was to provide archaeological evidence to support the belief that the Aryan race, considered superior by the Nazis, descended from Norse gods. The Il-2 Project received significant funds and resources, with millions of dollars allocated for its efforts. The focus of the project was on exploring ancient sites and artifacts, particularly those associated with Germanic and Norse cultures. They attempted to find archaeological evidence that ancient Germanic tribes were direct descendants of gods and inherently superior to other races. However, the project's efforts were largely unsuccessful, and they failed to find solid evidence during their quests. Adolf Hitler was an ambitious man, and one of his ambitions was to build the greatest cannon ever. The Gustav gun was over 46 meters long and over 12 meters high, and weighed almost 1,350 tons, and weighing almost 1,350 tons. The purpose of the cannon was to destroy the fortifications on the French border that lay along the Maginot Line. As you might expect, the cannon was not particularly easy to use. For example, it took long to fire and cost a whopping $67 million. In addition, it required a crew of 250 soldiers and engineers. The Gustav cannon ended up firing only 48 shots, because it turned out that its size made it an easy target for the Allied pilots. It was therefore also quickly decommissioned, and only later were the remains of the cannons found in eastern Germany. During World War II, Japan launched a secret weapon against the United States, Fugo, or fire balloons. These weren't conventional bombs, but hydrogen-filled balloons carrying incendiary and fragmentation bombs, designed to ride the jet stream across the Pacific Ocean. From late 1944 to early 1945, Japan released over 9,000 balloon bombs aimed at starting forest fires, creating panic, and diverting American attention from the Pacific Front. Each balloon measured about 33 feet or 10 meters across, made of lightweight washi paper, and equipped with ballast bags and barometric sensors to maintain altitude. They could float for up to 3 days and travel more than 5,965 miles, or 9,600 kilometers, an astonishing feat for the time. Around 300 balloons reached North America, from Alaska to Mexico and as far inland as Michigan. The deadliest incident occurred on May 5, 1945, near Bly, Oregon, when Elsie Mitchell and 5 children were killed after encountering a downed balloon. This was the only deadly enemy action on U.S. soil during World War II. To prevent panic and deny Japan feedback, the U.S. government enforced a media blackout. The strategy worked. Japan believed the campaign had failed and discontinued the program in 1945. Uranverein, or the Uranium Club, was Nazi Germany's secret attempt to develop nuclear energy and potentially a powerful weapon during World War II. The project began in April 1939. Shortly after German scientists Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann discovered nuclear fission and initially showed promise. However, it quickly ran into problems. Unlike the well-coordinated Manhattan Project in the United States, the German nuclear program suffered from a lack of central leadership, insufficient funding, and vague military objectives. Additional delays were caused by internal rivalries and distrust of certain scientific theories, especially those associated with Einstein. One of the most fascinating remnants of this project is the so-called Haigerloch reactor, built beneath a church in the town of Haigerloch in southwest Germany. Constructed in 1944 and 1945, it consisted of uranium cubes suspended in heavy water in an attempt to initiate a controlled chain reaction. The experiment ultimately failed due to a lack of sufficient uranium and an ineffective setup. In April 1945, American troops discovered the reactor during a covert mission, dismantled the installation, and seized the materials. Later analysis revealed that the German program was still far from achieving nuclear weapons technology. During the Allied invasion of Normandy in June 1944, one of the greatest challenges was getting troops and supplies ashore quickly without access to a port. The solution? Build portable, temporary harbors in secret, tow them across the channel, and assemble them on the French coast. These became known as the Mulberry Harbors, massive artificial ports made up of prefabricated concrete caissons, floating roadways, and steel structures. They were designed to be towed in sections and quickly assembled on site. Mulberry A was set up at Omaha Beach for the American forces, while Mulberry B was constructed at Gold Beach for the British. Construction began right after D-Day, and within days, Mulberry B was operational, processing thousands of tons of supplies daily by the end of June. A massive storm on June 19, 1944, destroyed Mulberry. A beyond repair. However, Mulberry B remained in use for over 10 months. Thanks to these harbors, more than 2.5 million troops, 500,000 vehicles, and 4 million tons of supplies were safely landed. Historians agree that the Mulberries helped shorten the war by several months. One of the most impressive vehicles of the German war machine was the Panzerkampfwagen Tiger II, better known as the Tiger II or Königsteiger. This heavy tank symbolized both the technological ambition and logistical overreach of the Third Reich. Developed as the successor to the already feared Tiger I, it was introduced in 1944 and designed to outperform any Allied tank with sheer firepower and virtually impenetrable armor. The Tiger II combined the thick armor of the Tiger I with the sloped design of the Soviet T-34, allowing it to both deflect and absorb incoming shells. Armed with one of the most powerful tank guns of the war, the Tiger II could destroy almost any enemy tank at long range. Its front armor was up to 6 inches, or 150 millimeters thick, and sloped for maximum effectiveness. It first saw action in Normandy after D-Day and later during the Battle of the Bulge. However, the tank had major drawbacks. It was extremely heavy, fuel-hungry, and prone to mechanical issues. Repairs on the battlefield were difficult due to its complexity. Only 492 units were built, far too few to turn the tide of the war. The Quarry of Forgotten Cars in France is a remarkable site where a collection of abandoned vehicles, mainly from World War II, was discovered. Hidden in a quarry in the French countryside, the location gained fame for its historical significance and the mystery surrounding the forgotten cars. It's believed that the vehicles were hidden at the start of the war to prevent them from being seized by the Nazis during the German occupation of France. Many of the cars are now rusted or damaged, indicating they have been untouched for decades. The discovery was made by Belgian photographer Vincent Michael, who documented the site and its vehicles. While a few have been recovered for auction, most remain in the quarry, too damaged to be moved. The collection features cars from the 1930s and 40s, showcasing a wide array of vintage designs that offer a snapshot of that era's automotive history. Covered in rust and decay, the cars tell a story of loss and resilience, making the site a compelling destination for historians and car enthusiasts alike.
The Atlantic Wall was a gigantic coastal defense structure built by the Nazis during World War II. It was like an enormous wall all along the coastlines of the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, from Norway to the Spanish border. This wall was hard to miss, as it stretched more than 3,100 miles. What was in this wall? Well, concrete bunkers, fortifications, and even natural obstacles, like cliffs and rocks, were used. The goal was to create an almost impenetrable fortress that could be defended by relatively few troops. The wall was supposed to protect key ports, as well as military and industrial targets. Building this megawall cost a fortune in resources and manpower, and more than 1.4 million workers were involved. Some were forced laborers from concentration camps. More than 656,000 square miles of concrete and 1.2 million tons of steel went into this project. But despite all the efforts, the wall was breached by the Allies on D-Day, which was June 6, 1944, during the Normandy invasion. During World War II, Heinrich Himmler developed a plan known as Alpine Festung in November and December 1943. This plan involved retreating the German government and armed forces to an area extending from the southern Bavaria across western Austria to northern Italy. The concept of this plan served as an effective propaganda tool and military deception strategy applied by the Germans in the later stages of the war. Intelligence reports received by the Supreme Headquarters of the Allied Expeditionary Forces indicated that the Alpine region harbored supplies of food and military necessities accumulated over the preceding 6 months, as well as weapon production facilities. These reports suggested that Hitler could evade the Allies and cause significant difficulties for occupying forces throughout Germany from this fortified terrain. Rumors were leaked to neutral governments, keeping the readiness state of the fortress uncertain. To further mislead Allied military intelligence, false reports and accounts of construction materials, weapon production, and troop transports were made. This elaborate deception is considered one of their greatest achievements during the war, although the exact extent of success is disputed. Weather Station Kurt was an automatic weather station, operated by German Kriegsmarine during the World War II. It was established in October 1943 by a team of U-boat crews in a secret operation in northern Labrador, Newfoundland. This marked the only known armed German military operation on land in North America. The purpose of Weather Station Kurt was to collect meteorological data that could aid German U-boat operations in the North Atlantic. The station was equipped with advanced technology to measure temperature, wind speed, air pressure, and other crucial weather parameters. The collected data would provide valuable information for planning U-boat patrols and convoy attacks. However, their secret operation did not remain hidden for long. In 1944, Joint Canadian-American Military Expedition, codename Operation Victory, was launched to disable the German weather station. Using aerial photography and intelligence gathered from German prisoners of war, the Allies were able to pinpoint its location. In July 1945, a team of Canadian soldiers, supported by American personnel, embarked on a daring mission to dismantle the weather station. They faced logistical challenges and had to navigate rugged terrain, but their determination paid off. On August 22, 1945, they reached the location and successfully dismantled the station, effectively ending Weather Station Kurt's operation. Sometime during World War II, in a place about 30 minutes from Vienna in Austria, the Nazis found an ideal location to build the first jet fighter. The place where they did this was the Cerro Grati, a huge underground cave system located under a mine. After an accidental flood, it was abandoned in 1912. For a brief period in the 1930s, it had become a tourist attraction, and years later, the Nazis took it over. As fascinating as the cave was, its 60-meter depth offered maximum protection against an Allied attack. It also provided enough cover, both literally and figuratively, because the cave was a secret to protect the Nazis long enough. The sea cave eventually housed 2,000 workers, who made the first jet fighter there. Today, a model of the infamous plane is on display. Can you imagine accidentally stumbling upon such a cave?
Hobart's funnies were specially modified tanks designed to overcome the deadly obstacles of the Atlantic Wall during the D-Day landings in June 1944. Named after Major General Percy Hobart, the visionary British tank commander who conceived them, these strange but incredibly effective machines combined inventive engineering with battlefield necessity, turning standard tanks into multi-purpose assault vehicles. The funnies included mine-clearing tanks like the Sherman Crab, fitted with rotating chains to safely detonate mines. Other models laid down carpets over soft sand and craters to help vehicles pass. Some were flamethrower tanks to clear out bunkers and trenches. There were also bridge-laying tanks to cross anti-tank ditches quickly, as well as amphibious tanks, smoke generators, and demolition vehicles. Hobart recognized that conventional tanks would be useless against the heavily fortified beaches of Normandy. These eccentric machines were crucial to breaking German defenses and played a key role in the success of Operation Overlord. The Mistel program was a secret aviation project by the Luftwaffe involving the development of unique composite aircraft. These aircraft were essentially giant flying bombs. The name Mistel, meaning mistletoe, a parasitic plant, symbolized the upper fighter aircraft mounted atop a modified bomber. The pilot would fly the combined aircraft toward the target, then release the unmanned lower part, which continued on its own toward the objective. The most common variant featured a Focke-Wulf FW-190, mounted on a repurposed Junkers Ju-88, whose nose had been replaced with a shaped explosive warhead. The system was intended to strike heavily fortified targets, such as shipyards, bridges, or military facilities. After releasing the weapon, the pilot would return safely to base. The program began in 1943, as Germany searched for alternative methods to attack strategic objectives. Around 250 Mistel combinations were built, but only a few achieved measurable results. Some inflicted damage on infrastructure in France, but not enough to influence the war's outcome. After the war, other countries studied the technology, but the concept was ultimately abandoned. The USS Inaugural was an Admiral-class minesweeper commissioned in December 1944. Designed to detect and clear naval mines, the ship played a crucial role in ensuring safe passage for Allied vessels during World War II. The Admiral class was the largest and most successful class of U.S. minesweepers in the war. After sea trials, the Inaugural was deployed to the Pacific, participating in the Battle of Okinawa, where it escorted convoys and conducted patrols. In the war's aftermath, it carried out mine-sweeping operations around Japan and Korea, clearing 82 mines and earning 2 battle stars. Decommissioned in 1946, the Inaugural was later converted into a museum ship in St. Louis, Missouri in 1968. It was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1986. However, during the Great Flood of 1993, the vessel broke free from its moorings, capsized, and sank in the Mississippi River. Due to extensive damage, restoration was deemed unfeasible. The wreck remains partially submerged and is still visible during low water levels. The Mercedes-Benz 770 Grosser, also known as the Grosser Mercedes, was not a weapon but a symbol of power, prestige, and propaganda in Nazi Germany. Originally introduced in 1930, this imposing luxury car became infamous during the Third Reich as the favored state vehicle of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi elite. With its size, luxurious design, and striking appearance, the 770 was a rolling symbol of authoritarian megalomania. The later models, especially the W150 series introduced in 1938, were equipped with armor plating and bulletproof glass, making them some of the first true armored limousines. Under the hood was a 20-gallon or 7.7-liter supercharged V8 engine, producing over 230 horsepower. Very impressive for its time, especially considering the heavy armor. With its long wheelbase and elegant fenders, the car had an almost regal appearance. It was ideal for military parades, diplomatic ceremonies, and propaganda events. Hitler's personal models often appeared in footage of speeches and state visits, usually with an open roof so he could salute the crowd. These images contributed to the global image of a strong, untouchable regime. Though a luxury vehicle, the 770 became inseparably linked with the militaristic nature of the Nazi regime, its elegance repurposed as a display of power. In 1943, during intense fighting on the Eastern Front, a German Focke-Wulf 190 fighter plane crashed into a remote swampy forest near Leningrad. The pilot likely encountered enemy fire or technical failure during a mission. The aircraft vanished into the marsh and remained untouched for decades, as nature slowly reclaimed the area. It wasn't until 1989, 45 years later, that aviation enthusiasts discovered the wreck, which was astonishingly well preserved. The swamp's low oxygen levels helped protect many parts, including instruments and weaponry. Even the original Luftwaffe camouflage and markings were still visible on the wings, an extremely rare sight for aircraft submerged that long. The discovery stunned historians and offered a unique glimpse into the air war over the Soviet Union, as if the aircraft had just emerged from the past. The plane was recovered and placed on display at the Central Air Force Museum in Haunebu, Russia. Its exceptional condition stands as a tribute to World War II aviation and reminds us the many untold stories hidden on former battlefields.
The sun gun, also known as the helio beam, is a theoretical orbital weapon proposed during World War II. The sun gun is a concept where a concave mirror mounted on a satellite is used to focus sunlight onto a small area of the Earth's surface, potentially causing harmful effects due to intense heat. This idea was developed by the German physicist Hermann Oberth in 1929. He envisioned a space station located at approximately 5,095 miles above the Earth, equipped with a large reflector, which was made of metallic sodium. The proposed reflector, with an area of 3.5 square miles, would be capable of concentrating sunlight to generate enough heat to boil an ocean or ignite a city. During World War II, a group of German scientists expanded Oberth's concept of the sun gun at the German artillery, proving ground in Hillsborough. The Nazis also claimed that if given 50 to 100 years, they could have built the mass destruction weapon. In the mid-1920s, the Friedrichsgesellschaft, a German organization deeply intertwined with Nazism, embarked on expeditions to Tibet. Their aim was to find evidence of the ancient Aryan ancestors who were reportedly descended from a race of Nordic aliens, who had made the inner Earth their home. Inspired by these beliefs, Adolf Hitler sought to establish a presence in Antarctica. In 1938, an expedition was sent to the continent in search of a hidden realm known as the Serpent World. The complex consisted of 7 levels of vast underground caves and tunnels. It was supposed to act as an extraterrestrial launching pad for missions within our galaxy. Reportedly, the inhabitants of this home even encouraged the Nazis to establish a colony alongside them. The purpose of this colony was to promote joint scientific and technological development between the Germans and the extraterrestrial beings. As World War II engulfed the planet, the Nazis began the construction of an impenetrable underwater fortress in Antarctica, known as Station 211. This fortress aimed to control the surrounding waters and serve as a relocation site for Heinrich Himmler's most secret projects. Among these projects were anti-gravity discs and advanced technologies such as the wonder weapon Die Glocke. To this day, the existence of 7 systems of shelters and tunnels, collectively known as Project Rice in the Owl Mountains region, is known. Project Rice was a massive construction initiative undertaken by Nazi Germany during World War II. The purpose of this ambitious project remains shrouded in mystery, and its full extent and objectives have yet to be fully understood. Located in the Owl Mountains in present-day Poland, Project Rice involved the construction of an underground network of tunnels, bunkers, and facilities. The exact purpose of Project Rice is still a subject of debate and speculation among historians and researchers. Over the years, various theories have emerged, ranging from its potential use as Adolf Hitler's headquarters, a secret location for weapon development, to a secure storage facility for valuable artifacts. Some even suggest it could have been intended as a secret underground transportation system or a refuge for high-ranking Nazi officials. The tunnels stretch for miles or kilometers and feature intricate designs, including chambers, shafts, staircases, and even water installations. Many of these underground facilities were also equipped with heavy blast doors, ventilation systems, and other defensive measures, indicating their strategic significance. If you've ever seen any of the Mummy movies, then you're probably familiar with the Pharaoh's Curse. It's said that after the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, a series of suspicious and curse-like events took place, the responsible team of archaeologists bearing the brunt of it. During the excavation of the tomb, several artifacts were found, including 2 metal trumpet-like musical instruments. These appeared to be so-called instruments of destruction. We now fast forward to the spring of 1939. The BBC wanted to do a live broadcast where they played the trumpets for the first time in over 3,000 years, but people soon started talking about a curse when the car of one of the television presenters was almost run off the road on the way to the studio. Also, the power went out and spare lamps didn't work. But this was also around the time that Hitler invaded Poland and World War II officially began. It was decided not to trumpet again, until 1967. Shortly thereafter, the 6-day war between Egypt and Israel began. When the trumpets were played again, the Egyptian Revolution began a week later. Maybe they better leave these cursed trumpets alone, don't you think? Number 9.
One of the lesser-known but striking innovations from the final phase of World War II was the so-called Zielgerät 1229, nicknamed Vampire. This was the world's first portable infrared night vision system designed for infantry use. Developed in 1944 and 1945, it allowed soldiers to see in the dark, theoretically offering a tactical advantage during nighttime operations. The system was mounted on a standard rifle of the time, along with an infrared spotlight that emitted invisible light. The operator also carried a 31 pounds or 14 kilogram backpack battery to power the system. Altogether, it turned the user into an early version of a modern night patrol soldier, equipped with technology far ahead of its time. While infrared viewing itself wasn't new, the Germans were the first to deploy it in this form on the battlefield, although its use was limited. It was mainly tested by special units on the Eastern Front, who reported advantages during night reconnaissance in forests and urban areas. Still, the system's heavy weight, limited range of around 656 feet, or 200 meters, and very late deployment meant it had little strategic impact. After the war, the discovery of this device spurred accelerated research in countries like the United States and the Soviet Union. The USS Arizona Memorial is one of the most iconic sites in the United States, located at Pearl Harbor on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. This memorial honors the victims of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, which marked America's entry into World War II. The USS Arizona was a Pennsylvania-class battleship commissioned in 1916. During the attack, the ship was hit by a Japanese bomb that detonated its forward ammunition magazine. The explosion split the vessel in two and sank it within minutes, killing 1,177 crew members, more than any other ship that day. The wreck still lies at the bottom of the harbor and is considered a war grave. The USS Arizona Memorial was built directly above the sunken ship in 1962, without touching or disturbing the wreck. Architect Alfred Price designed it as a symbol of defeat, followed by victory, with a structure that dips in the middle and rises again at both ends. Inside, a marble wall bears the names of all the sailors and Marines who died aboard the Arizona. Visitors can still see parts of the wreck beneath the water, and oil droplets, known as black tears, still occasionally rise to the surface. RAF Fokingham is a former Royal Air Force airbase in Lincolnshire, United Kingdom. Oh my god. Number 20. RAF Fokingham is a former Royal Air Force base in Lincolnshire, United Kingdom that is transformed into a remarkable vehicle graveyard. Opened in 1940, the base initially served as a decoy airfield for RAF Spitalgate, complete with fake aircraft and personnel to mislead enemy forces. It saw heavy use during both World War II and the Cold War. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, it was repurposed by RAF Bomber Command as a launch site for the PGM-17 Thor, an intermediate-range ballistic missile. The base was officially closed in 1963. Today, the site is known for its vast collection of decaying military vehicles, as well as its mid-20th century machinery, including tractors, trucks, cranes, and fire engines. The main runway, running north to south, is lined with hundreds of these relics, creating a surreal landscape that draws urban explorers and photographers alike. Though now private property, primarily used for agriculture, the remnants of the airfield and its vehicle graveyard remain a captivating destination.
The V3 cannon, also known as the London gun, was a super cannon developed by the Nazis during World War II. This thing wasn't just any ordinary cannon, it was enormous, and the idea was to use it as a mega long-range shooter. Imagine a gigantic cannon capable of firing projectiles at high speeds over vast distances. The V3 cannon was intended to bombard London from two large bunkers in the northern France. It was a frightening idea, and the intention was to terrify the city's population. It was developed by a clever German engineer named August Konders, who presented his idea to the Minister of War Production. Hitler was immediately enthusiastic and pumped a lot of money into the project. Building this cannon involved a lot of digging and forced labors in a massive underground bunker in northern France. But ultimately, before the cannon could hit London, the launch facilities were destroyed by Allied bombing raids. The V3 cannon was never used as intended. However, two similar cannons were used to bombard Luxembourg from December 1944 to February 1945. Wewelsburg Castle, located in northwestern Germany, has a long history shrouded in mystery. Once a pseudo-religious retreat for Hitler's SS, this castle has captured the imagination since 1945. Its crypt, filled with echoes and enigmatic occult symbols, had led to tales of pagan ceremonies conducted by the Brotherhood. Originally built in the 17th century as a triangular structure, this castle underwent a transformation in the 1930s, under the direction of Heinrich Himmler. Thousands of forced laborers toiled to bring Himmler's bizarre blueprint to life. Inside the castle's dark crypt, you'll find 12 stones that surround the walls, with a gas pipe in the center, intended to feed an eternal flame. Going upstairs, the circular hull of SS generals revealed an occult symbol known as the Black Sun, embedded in the marble floor. Standing in the center, your voice is amplified so intensely that it takes on a disturbing, almost extraterrestrial quality as it echoes through the vaulted room. In the Wolf's Lair, Adolf Hitler's top-secret military headquarters of the Eastern Front, numerous intriguing artifacts have been discovered. Deeply hidden in the Masurian forests of Poland, this secret complex was the site of recent archaeological work that unearthed significant items, shedding light on the functioning of the refuge. Among the remarkable findings are the stairs leading to Hitler's personal barracks and 2 bunker doors, one of which is believed to have been part of his own bunker. These discoveries provide insights into the layout of the complex and the specific locations where a failed assassination attempt occurred in 1944. At this site, a painted flag and an engraved stone with the emblem of Hitler's Special Protection Battalion were recovered. The Wolf's Lair, with its high level of security and Hitler's extended stay of 850 days, held immense significance for the Nazi regime. Ultimately, as the war turned against them, Hitler retreated to his bunker in Berlin, and the Wolf's Lair was destroyed. A cryptography professor was walking through a flea market one day when an object caught his attention. It was a typewriter offered for sale for 100 euros. At least, that's what he thought at first, but when he looked again, he saw that it wasn't a typewriter, but a World War II encryption machine. Enigma machines, as they were called, were widely used during the war to transmit coded military messages. Alan Turing, a man who was good in math, eventually managed to crack the infamous Enigma code. The professor who bought the encryption machine had no intention of keeping it. He later offered it for auction with a starting price of 9,000 euros. It was eventually sold to an online bidder in Romania for a whopping 45,000 euros.
One of the most bizarre and ambitious secret weapons developed by the British during World War II was the Great Panjandrum. This was a massive rocket-powered explosive cart designed to smash through Germany's concrete Atlantic Wall. The concept was born in 1942 at the British Ministry of Supply. Essentially, the Panjandrum was a huge 2-wheeled wooden contraption, about 20 feet or 6 meters in diameter, lined with dozens of rocket motors around its rims. The plan was to launch it from landing craft onto beaches during amphibious assaults. It would then barrel toward enemy defenses at high speed, break through obstacles, and detonate its explosive payload to clear a path for infantry and tanks. With 28 cordite rockets on each wheel, the weapon was supposed to reach speeds of up to 62 miles per hour, or 100 kilometers per hour, an early and extremely unconventional form of land-based rocket propulsion. It carried about 1,500 pounds, or 680 kilograms of explosives, meant to destroy fortified positions. In practice, however, the Panjandrum proved nearly impossible to control. The rockets provided uneven thrust, causing it to spin out, veer off course, or even launch into the air. During test runs, it became a danger to its own crew. The project was abandoned in 1943 due to its impracticality and danger. Which secret technology would you want to use? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we've made, click one on the screen or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.